Hello, listeners. This is Kat. Welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of Little Acts of Kindness. This will be Part 10, Chapter 10, entitled Support Weapons. Shota was resting in the teacher's lounge when a knock came at the door. Yagi, the only other person in the room, frowned as he went to open it, puffing up to his iconic All Might look. "Young Midoriya?" the man questioned, a worried note in his voice. He let the kid in and closed the door, shrinking back down. Shota looked at the kid and saw that the boy was hyperventilating, on the verge of a panic attack. The kid walked over to him, holding up a note for him to read. Shota glanced at it, seeing it was just a note from Mizashi that the kid needed to get away for a little bit. "Sit, Midoriya," Shota commanded gently, tilting his head to the spot next to him. "Go get some hot chocolate, Yagi," he told the man who nodded and left the room. Shota saw that the kid was working on grounding himself, and so he waited for a minute. Then he focused on the kid, who was now calmer. "Do you want to talk about what happened?" The boy hesitated, shifting for a moment. Shota almost thought the boy would say no, but then he gave a slow nod. Izuku bit his lip as he entered the class, before, after a moment of indecision, moving to sit next to Taro-kun and Kaio-kun. Recently, the two boys decided that Izuku was their friend. They helped him out in class, and even kept Katon away from him. With these two as his friends, they protected him. It was nice to feel wanted for once. "Izu-chan!" Kaio-kun greeted him, smiling with razor-sharp teeth. Machi Kaio was a shorter boy, with long brown hair tied into a ponytail. He had narrow brown eyes that seemed to pierce into a person and find their weaknesses. Izuku sometimes thought that his eyes gave that feel because of Kaio-kun's quirk. His quirk was called Judgment. It apparently allowed him to judge if a person was good or bad by looking at them. Or, that was what it was in the simplest terms, according to Kaio-kun. It let him see if a person felt guilty for any specific action they've taken in the past 24 hours. Izuku thought it would be really useful in police work or as a detective. Good morning, Kaio-kun. Taro-kun, Izuku greeted, glad he didn't stutter over their names. Taro gave a nod back, but was unable to respond as the teacher came in. Hachisuka Taro was a large boy, easily a couple heads taller than everyone else in the classroom. He was thickly built, with large muscles. His head looked more rock-like, the top of his head flat and squared off, but his jaw jutting out into a pointed angle. Taro had a really cool quirk that let him communicate with insects, though Izuku couldn't help but to shy away. He didn't really like bugs after an incident when he was 7 and ended up stinged by a giant hornet. Yeah, he was lucky his mom had gotten him to the clinic in time. A few days later, Taro-kun and Kaio-kun invited him to hang out for the weekend, so Izuku did, unaware of what his friends were planning. Everything seemed normal at first, but it was the afternoon of the first day, and they were walking through the streets when they found a younger kid, one Izuku didn't recognize, but one Kaio-kun apparently did. "Oh, look, it's Yamai!" The younger child looked up, eyes apparently widening in fear as he turned and started to run away. Izuku had been confused as his friends gave chase to the boy, and so had followed after them, despite feeling that something was off with the situation. When he caught up to the two faster boys, they had the younger boy cornered, and Kaio-kun was holding him against the wall. What are you doing?" Izuku asked, voice trembling. Taro-kun looked over at him and smiled. That smile sent shivers down Izuku's back, and he couldn't help but to take a step back. Something was very wrong. It almost looked like they were bullying the kid, but they wouldn't do that, right? "Izu-chan," Taro started, wrapping an arm around him. "See, Yamai here owes us money, and he's been avoiding us. We just want to collect what's owed." The younger-looking boy trembled. "I won't pay you any more, not after what it did to my sister." "See, even the kid admits to owing us money. We're your friends, right?" Izuku hesitantly nodded to that. "Friends help each other. So how about you help us?" Izuku's stomach sank, but he didn't want to betray the trust his friends had in him, that they thought they could count on him to help them. And, well, the kid admitted to owing money, right? Izuku glanced at Taro-kun, and the boy's smile became even wider. "Help Kaio-kun hold Yamai." And Izuku did. He was unable to look away as Taro-kun hit the kid over and over again, unable to let go even as tears formed in his eyes. His stomach sank to the bottom of the earth, and Izuku knew what was happening was wrong. But he so desperately wanted to be friends with someone. Desperately wanted to feel like he belonged. So he held on, even as his heart screamed at him. A couple weeks passed like that, the two boys now inviting him more often, having him help in their bullying. And that's what it was. Izuku knew that. He knew it was wrong. But they didn't listen to him when he asked them to stop, so he stayed silent. The worst part was that a small part of Izuku liked it. He wasn't the one being hurt anymore, not now that he was with Taro-kun and Kaio-kun. If being friends with them meant hurting other people, then maybe that was just the cross he would have to bear. He wished his mom was still around. He could use her guidance in this matter. Was it really okay to hurt others if it meant not getting hurt himself? Izuku hated that he was being complacent to the bullying, hated that he wasn't strong enough to stand up to his friends, hated himself for letting others get hurt. He wanted to be a hero, didn't he? So why wasn't he helping the victims? Why was he helping the bullies? Then came the day when Taro-kun asked him why Izuku always shied away from his bugs, and he, foolish and naive, admitted to being afraid of bugs and small dark spaces. He hadn't realized then that the two boys were getting tired of him, tired of his weak and cowardly ways, how noble he was, how he tried to get them to not hurt others as much. The following day, they had shoved him into that dark closet, and Izuku felt a sting against his neck. Everything started going hazy, and he was throwing himself against the walls of the closet, fear and desperation and anger clawing at him. How dare they hurt him like this? Izuku remembered screaming and shouting and burning white-hot rage, but he didn't remember exactly what he was saying. After a few minutes, his fear had overtaken him, and he was begging to be let out, as the sounds of scuttling encroached him. He couldn't see anything, but he heard the movement, then felt it. Thousands of little legs crawling all over him, a buzzing around him, let him know that flying insects were somehow in the closet, and he felt the bugs bite him. Felt stingers pierce into his skin. Everything went wobbly and black, and the next thing Izuku knew was he was waking up at the clinic. The boy was quiet a moment longer, after his nod, looking as if he was thinking about what happened, hands rubbing up and down his arms and tears gathering in his eyes before he spoke. Back in my first year of junior high school, a couple of boys were really nice to me and claimed that we were friends. They spent time with me, helped me, and were like actual friends. Eventually, they asked about my fears, and I thought they were my friends, so I told them, a few of them. Tears came to Midoriya's eyes. They forced me into a dark closet. I heard some sort of scuttling sound, and then I was being bit, over and over again. I couldn't see them, but I could feel the bugs crawling all over, attacking me. I don't know how I got out. Just that I was in the clinic, and the school actually gave those two boys detention. The school scolded them for sending me to the clinic. Only detention? Shota questioned, incredulous. He knew that Alderan was a bad school, but that went beyond bad. Was the school trying to raise villains? Midoriya nodded. Yes. The boys claimed it was just a prank. Meant to help me get over my fears. That they didn't know that some of those insects were poisonous. I guess something triggered a flashback, Shota questioned, keeping his tone soft. Asui. She kept telling me to call her Sue. And then when I wouldn't call her that, she said, "We're friends. You can call me Sue." And it just reminded me, basically, of how they claimed to be my friends. And I just... Midoriya was crying now, tears streaming down his face. It's all right. You can't help the things that cause you to panic, Shota told the boy, and they sat for a minute in silence, Midoriya furiously wiping away the tears. The door opened and Yagi came back in. He was carrying the beverage and brought it over to Midoriya, who took it. The man's blue eyes met his, looking questioningly at him for a moment. Shota shook his head slightly. It wasn't Yagi's business, not unless Midoriya wanted to share it with him. I asked President Mike to inform Midnight that Midoriya was excused from her class, Yagi stated. He gave a nod, glancing over at the kid who was drinking the hot chocolate. For once, Shota was glad that Nezu had another teacher subbing the history classes while he was recovering. The only class he currently had to teach was homeroom, and heroics. Midoriya was silent now, not saying anything, and Shota let the kid collect his thoughts. After another half an hour, the kid said he was ready to return to class, and he nodded. I'll escort you, my boy, Yagi stated. The kid nodded, and the two walked out of the room. Shota frowned. He really needed to investigate Alderan as quickly as possible, but with his arms out of commission, he might have to call in some favors from a couple of underground heroes. Izuku shuffled around his house, slowly getting ready for the school day. Yesterday hadn't been the best, but he had finally managed to put it out of his mind. Although now his classmates knew of his issues with friends, Haten had told them of the incident. At least Asui had apologized, saying that if he was more comfortable calling her Asui, then he didn't have to call her Sue. He finished getting ready and waited by the door. Eventually there was a knock and he opened it, smiling a bit at Mike-sensei. "You ready, kiddo?" the man asked. "Yes," Izuku replied. Mike-sensei handed him a new jelly packet to try, a peach-flavored one. After a not-so-quiet drive as Mike-sensei sang along with most of the songs on, they arrived at the school. This time Present Mike came with them to the room, chatting with Aizawa happily about some sort of dinner plan. Aizawa was listening, a fond look in his eyes, a sort of softness that he had around Mike. Isuku really liked that he could see this side of his teachers. It made them seem more human, and way different than his previous teachers. Ida came into the room, and Mike huffed, calling out a goodbye as he went to go change into his hero costume. Later at lunch, Isuku was eating when Ida asked, "Do you think Mike-sensei dislikes me?" "Why do you think that?" Izuku questioned, startled by the question. "Well, in the morning he always leaves after I arrive. Or, if he arrives after I do, he never stays long. I thought at first that he just may not want to talk with a student there to overhear, but he seemed perfectly fine with you being there, so is it just me?" "I don't think he dislikes you. It's probably that you come in around the time that he has to be getting to class," Izuku told the boy, though he knew that the reason was more likely to be along the lines that Ida didn't know the two were in a relationship. "Ah, I see. Thank you, Midoriya. I should have considered that," Ida said, doing a hand-chopping motion. Lunch finished, and they began their heroics class, another lesson on infiltration, this time going on how the skill was useful to the different types of heroes. The day came to an end, and Izuku stayed behind with Aizawa-sensei as the rest of the class piled out. "We forgot to tell you this morning that Hizashi and I will be part of a meeting. Do you mind waiting an hour or so for us to finish?" "It's fine," Izuku stated. Aizawa nodded. "We'll find you. Feel free to explore if you want." He gave a thumbs up and decided that since he had the time, he should look around. About 10 minutes later, he heard a soft bang, and curious, he went in that direction. He found himself in what looked to be a shooting range, and the pro hero Snipe was shooting at targets that were moving fast. The teacher paused, looking towards him. "Howdy," the man called out, lifting a hand in salute. "Hello," Izuku nervously replied. "You need something?" the teacher questioned. "No, I was just exploring," Izuku answered. "I'll get out of your way now." "You ain't bothering me, kiddo. Feel free to stick around if you want." Izuku hesitated, but in the end his curiosity won out, so he made his way further into the room. The teachers of UA really were different. None of them were as mean as the teachers at Alderan had been. He watched as Snipe returned to shooting the targets. His quirk was really cool, being able to manipulate each of the shots he took. He must have very good eyesight, as the man did shoot Shigaraki's arm and didn't hit Izuku despite being at the entrance of the USJ. Izuku kept thinking about how useful the quirk was, and possible different uses for it. He blinked as he realized he had been muttering, and thinking about it, he had probably been muttering for a few minutes now. Yet the teacher made no comment on it being annoying. In fact, Snipe hadn't even seemed to notice it. "You plan to use any support weaponry? Something to give you an edge?" Snipe questioned after another couple minutes working on reloading his pistol. "I never really thought about it," Izuku responded. "Midoriya Izuku. Quirk superpower enhances your physical strength, making you a short-range fighter. If you were going to get something, your best bet would be something that gives you more range." Izuku blinked at that, tilting his head. Snipe turned to him, and Izuku couldn't see the teacher's eyes or anything. It was a bit unnerving, not being able to read whatever expressions the man could be making. "I help students decide on sport weaponry. Plenty of kids think their own things they need, but some of y'all struggle to find some useful items that can help counteract your weaknesses. That's where I come in. I usually help out with the second and third years, but I help any kid who finds me, so what do you say? Want to figure out something to help you out?" Sure," Isuku agreed, and the teacher nodded, going over to a wall and clicking a button. The wall spun around, revealing a bunch of weapons. Then the teacher startled him with a bow and some arrows. Izuku didn't like how they felt in his hands. The teacher went with a crossbow next, and Izuku still didn't feel like it was right. He didn't want something that took up both of his hands. He told this to Snipe, who nodded. The man had him try a throwing spear next, but it felt clunky to him. Next, the teacher went on to throwing knives, and they weren't bad. He tried a blow dart, which was cool, but not something that he thought really would fit him. Next, Snipe had him shoot a pistol, saying that while he had to start with two hands, eventually he could learn to use it one-handed if he liked. Izuku tested out the gun and was surprised by how much of an actual kick there was to it. The teacher moved on, and He tested out some strange weapon called a chakram, which seemed pretty fun, but it was complicated, as he could easily hurt his hand when throwing the circular blade. Then he also tried a boomerang. That's some of the more common weaponry. Anything suits your fancy. I liked both the gun and the chakram. The teacher nodded. I recommend focusing on one weapon for now. Which do you think will be the best to learn right now? Izuku looked between the two weapons. The gun. Snipe gave a hum. All right. What sort of gun do you want to start with? A pistol, Izuku answered after a moment of thought. Snipe grabbed the pistol and handed it over, going over some basic instructions. Right. I'll have Powerloader design one that fits your look, and we'll start you off with some rubber bullets. Come by after school next Wednesday and I'll give you the rundown. Sound good? Izuku nodded, quietly stuttering out a thanks. The student turned, starting to exit out the door when it opened and Mike stuck his head in. There you are, little listener. Ah, hello, Snipe, the English teacher said, waving. Howdy, Mike, Snipe greeted. You taking the kiddo home? Yeah, Mike said, giving a thumbs up. Are you ready to go, Midoriya? President Mike asked. Izuku nodded and followed the teacher, soon getting into Mike Sensei's car. The hero now back to his civilian outfit, hair loose and hanging down. While in the vehicle, he told his teachers of what happened, and that he was excited about learning something that can help him grow stronger as a hero. Aizawa told him it was good he was learning a new skill to help widen his options. Eventually, they arrived at his home, and they dropped him off at the apartment, Mike Sensei walking him up the stairs. Mike Sensei, Izuku started hesitantly. Yeah, little listener? The man asked, tilting his head and looking down towards him, green spiraled eyes meeting green eyes. Thank you for not being... Izuku trailed off. Mike Sensei smiled, eyes full of understanding and compassion. I would never hurt you on purpose, little listener. You're one of my students. It's my job to take care of you all. And it's one I take pride in. I love seeing you all grow into outstanding heroes. Izuku smiled, a small, thankful grin, and went inside of his home. He called out a hello to his mom, who said hello back, staring at the TV. He went into his room and started doing the assigned homework. After he finished his work, he went into the kitchen and started cooking some rice and fish with some miso. He ate and made sure his mother ate, and put her in bed after telling her to shower. He took his own shower and headed off to bed. She grimaced, feeling the clawing at her mind, a desperation that clouded her judgment. She needed to satisfy the craving to fulfill the urge. She hated it. Hated this feeling. Hated that she couldn't control herself. She wanted nothing more than to stop. But if she stopped, she couldn't let that happen again. She would save others, even if it meant sacrificing herself. She just hoped that he would be willing to help her again. Not that he knew he was helping her. He just thought she wanted to have fun. Maybe once she did, long ago before the attack, before she lost the guy she loved, before she realized what a cruel world they lived in. She had been so naive back then, and they had taken advantage of it. She wouldn't let that happen to any other kids, not if she could help it. But in the meantime, it was time to satisfy that curse she now lived with. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 10 of Little Acts of Kindness. Chapter 11 will be up next. A bit of an ominous ending to that chapter. Not a lot of detail there, and you're not really sure who it is that perspective is from, but I really like the way the author wrote this. Let me know your thoughts and reactions to everything so far. And as always, thank you so much for listening.